of Allegiance. Councilman Clappy, would you do the honor?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice Mayor Purdock, would you do this?
I'd be honored, sir. Our gracious Creator, we ask that you would come and be with us this evening with your Spirit to lead and guide us. We may do the good work for the citizens here of Clearlake and those who come to visit, that we could make good decisions for those who work here and support the staff that is here. We ask that you would lead us and guide us in all that is holy and in your name. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right, do we have any changes to agenda?
Yes, Mayor, there's item number 9. Staff is requesting that we pull it. There's further project changes, and the contractor requests have led staff to determine that the change orders are excessive and unwarranted at this time. The project will be completed as originally bid and contracted, and if any council members have any questions, if you could direct those to City Manager Flora or Director Goodman.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Purdock and a second by Councilman Kramer. We'll have electronic voting here, and it's ready to go. All right.
Motion passes with a unanimous vote of the council.
All right, we'll go to presentations. Chief White, I believe you. Roll, please.
You'd stand. Yeah, just stand there, please. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. Tonight, I have the honor of swearing in our newest police officer, Mr. Brady Ferris Crenshaw. Mr. Crenshaw, or Officer Crenshaw now, was born in Lancaster, California, and was raised in Fresno, California. He graduated from Clovis West High School. He has a 2-year-old daughter named Joy, who's here with him, and you'll get to see shortly. He enjoys fishing, camping, and going for hikes, which all link up to Lake County, so that's a good match. He loves to perform, whether it's singing or acting in a play, though I don't think he'll be performing tonight for you. He likes to keep himself in shape so that he can have a long career in life. He enjoys spending time with his family and friends. His career goals are eventually to be involved with the K-9 program or detectives, and also to eventually to make it to sergeant. What he likes about Clearlake is that it's a small town and a community that cares about its law enforcement and working together with members of the community. He looks forward to a long and healthy relationship with the city of Clearlake, and we are pleased to announce he was able to find housing. That was a significant challenge in the last few weeks. So we're fortunate that some of his family is here to join him in the audience, and I'll let him introduce them shortly. So what we'll do is I'll administer the oath of office, and then Celeste Diamond and his daughter Joy will be pinning the badge.
I, Brady Ferris Crenshaw,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Yeah.
Clovis High School, huh? Awesome. Two of my grandsons are going there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You take a photo. Yeah, go ahead. So if you just want to introduce real quick who's here. Yeah.
Celeste. So this is Celeste, and this is Joy. She's going to be turning 3 in June. I have my mom, Ozina, and an old family friend, Pam. Pat! Pat. Patricia, yes. She's seen me since I was this tall. A little nervous, but sorry. All right.
There you go. All right.
Okay.
So to his family, thank you guys for coming and being here. We'll take good care of him. He's been doing the in-house training the last 2 weeks, and then he'll move on with the field training officer. So he'll be in good hands, and we'll make sure that he meets all the requirements, gets all the necessary training and so forth to be safe there out on the street. But we appreciate you loaning him to us to fulfill this important job within the agency. So congratulations, and again, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, if we could take a brief break so that they could do photos real quick, and then we'll move on to the report. Thanks.
Clovis High School is huge.
Is it?
Oh, gosh, it's very.
Going back to the days of Jeff Smith?
You know, I didn't call you a name. Yeah, I did send it to you. For quite some time. I didn't have time. I'd have been late, and then you'd been yelling at me for that.
No, I gotta get my shots in.
And you do.
I do. You're not in the really shorts.
No, I never showed up in shorts.
Still showed up in shorts in the winter?
I have not followed up on that. You said they are portable units, so they're still okay unless they're using proven space. Right. You still need an answer on that specific? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and email that right now, so I don't forget. Yeah, if it's portable, then it's 200, sounds good.
2030, did you get any thank yous from residents at Lake Lynn? Excuse me? Did you get any thank yous from the residents of Lake Lynn? So, yes.
I know you are, I just didn't know.
Well, we thought that if there was good weather, these guys would get out here and start putting down.
You can't have that ever happen.
And, but they have come to
Having those little substations to make sure that there's that
work suspended.
In the dark, in the ditch.
I'm not sure what that weather they're talking about. Maybe it's whether it can.
And to me, like, use of force is absolutely necessary.
No, I just think it's probably cold enough every morning that they could start paving and so.
Probably can.
He hurt himself again after the fact.
But we got daylight savings time coming in March, so.
And we do have a project where they're paving right now.
That's true.
So it is getting done. They don't want to. We haven't decided whether or not to let them do that.
Well, they're the ones who did it, said that they would have wrapped up in mid-March.
All right, presentation of the police department annual report. Chief White.
Thank you, Mayor. I will share my screen. Aha, it worked. All right. So I'm here today to present the police department's annual report. I would like to start off with our mission statement because this is what guides everything that we do. So our mission statement, for those who aren't familiar with it, is to enhance public safety by providing professional, trustworthy service in partnership with the community. So in the last year, obviously, COVID has been an overriding, continuing, ongoing challenge with various changes in rules, regulations, that sort of thing, and also to impacts on the department. However, despite all that, we have continued our focus on community engagement. I believe that community engagement is one of the key components of producing a cleaner and safer city. We participated in the school career visit. It was actually the end of the school year, but many of the kids have been out of school, so we were able to go with the fire department and visit with the kids, talk to them about the different career fields within fire and police, not just with police officers, but also to dispatchers and that sort of thing. And it was a really nice opportunity for us to be able to reach out to see these kids who had, many of them been kept at home, that sort of thing. So really exciting event. We participated in the Soapbox Derby, and our employees volunteered and helped this year to actually build some cars for children who couldn't afford them. Those were sponsored by different members in the community, so that was really exciting. And then you could see this is one of the cars Sergeant Cook created, the K9 Derby car, which was very fast, and I had a runoff with him, but his other car, but I narrowly lost, but I'll improve it for the next time. But definitely a fun community event, but really an important opportunity for us to be able to connect with the community and for the employees involved with it to give back and to help those kids that couldn't have otherwise participated. And there was a good showing with the Derby. Another event that our teams participated in was a Thursday morning story time at the library. They're able to connect with the kids and read some stories and talk to them. And again, to build those connections that last throughout life, especially these young kids that stay within the community, that they have a positive interaction with the police. Because unfortunately, as we know, there's some cases where their only interaction may be a negative interaction because something happens with a parent or a family member. So a great opportunity for them to connect, even in the time of COVID. The July 4th event, as you know, this year was a little bit different because we had the concert, which was a significant concern as far as planning and being able to accommodate it, and considering this year that we started having more employees out on COVID leave for exposures. So it's definitely a challenge, but working together, we're able to do our part of it, and I want to emphasize that this really was a citywide team effort. We were one component, but Public Works, Administrative Services, everybody came together to make what I thought was a really great event, and a safe event, and an event with no significant law enforcement issues. So something that I think as a city, I mentioned during the prior one to be proud of, and I think once again here that we're able to deliver for our community. The easy answer would have been to say, well, we just won't do it because of COVID and close everything down. So really proud of the staff coming together and to making that happen. Obviously, we are impacted with the Cache fire. There was several fires leading up to this fire, but this was sort of the big one. And we've talked a lot about it, so I don't want to take too much time, but I did want to highlight the efforts of the first responders that came out to there. This was a really rapid moving fire. It was in a confined area, and it was closing ground very quickly and going to a densely populated mobile home parks. And between the staff coming together, it was not only the police officers, but the code enforcement officers. We had mutual aid that ultimately ended up rolling in, but these folks that were out there did an absolutely incredible job. Obviously there was ultimately one life lost through burn injuries, but outside of that, the number of people that they were able to evacuate in an extremely short period of time was nothing short of incredible. I mean, they had fire burning around them. It was a very dangerous situation. But they delivered, and not only that, they ultimately ended up, as the fire progressed into Lower Lake and there was concerns about the school and that sort of thing, our personnel, including Lieutenant Hobbs, who's here, went down there, took charge of it, made sure that they were able to safely get the children out and avoid significant loss of life that could have occurred. I mentioned that, the first responders are a key component, but also to the community. We have an informed community who's aware that when fire strikes that they have to respond and heed the warnings and so forth. And so it was, I think everything sort of came together in a perfect way in order to make sure that we minimize that loss of life. So one of the other ways that we have started with connecting with the community was through a program called QHIT. And basically, see, my slides got out of order, so I got thrown out for a second. I'm actually going to come back to this. So with regards to the fires, obviously we're concerned at all times about making sure that we're better prepared and that we have a resiliency as much as possible for being able to respond and to coordinate with the fire department and our other outside agencies. You may recall sometime back we applied for and received a grant from Cal OES to put in a microwave link, which sort of a technical jargon, but essentially to provide the fire department with another way to access resources through the internet and also to connect with us. Obviously nowadays so many things rely upon the internet. A side effect of that was we were able to get fiber optic internet at the Senior Community Center, which we all know is also a disaster shelter. And in times of PSPS outages, that sort of thing, the typical internet things fail. This system stays up essentially all the time. And we're able to extend that over to the fire department to make them more resilient. And it's a project that they had been trying to work on for some time to get fiber, but it wasn't feasible to bring it over to them for costs. Another project that we did was the county Cad Links. So our computer-aided dispatch and our 911 dispatch center, we were able to link up our systems with the county. So now when we respond to a fire, in fact, we were able to use it in several incidents, we can see where all the resources are at, regardless of whether they're sheriff dispatch resources or Clearlake dispatch resources. And we can also see calls for service occurring in each other's jurisdictions. This is a huge advantage for dispatchers because the traditional way of doing that would be you'd have to listen to a radio and then maybe call over and get the information over the phone. Now we can get it in real time and on the ground. When we're doing incident command, we can actually see in real time where everything's at. So a definite advantage to better prepare us when large-scale incidents happen. We also started the process. The planning has started several years ago, but moved forward with actually allocating money to become the fire dispatch backup for CAL FIRE, which dispatches all the fire assets in Lake County. So that project is underway, but getting the funding is huge, right? Because then you can start acquiring the equipment and so forth to do it. So the whole idea being is improving our resiliency for when disasters strike, and a lot in the technology area. Continuing with our connection with the community, we delivered Thanksgiving meals through the Cpoa sponsored that program. We participated with Shop with a Cop, the victim witness gift delivery. One thing that was nice this year was Shop with a Cop they brought back to in-person, so the officers are actually able to shop with the children. The prior year, they had the officers go shop off of a list. which, you know, the end result is the kids get stuff, but it was much nicer to actually walk around with them and communicate and interact. So that was nice to have that back this year. And then the POA stepped up at Christmas time and participated in purchasing gifts for the children within the community. Okay, so QHIT, which my slide got out of order. QHIT is a new program that we started to also, really to do two things. One of them is to collect surveys from the community. So when we respond to calls for service, the system's connected to our Cad system, and it'll automatically, based upon a certain rule set, send out surveys to callers. It occurs via a quick text message. It'll ask them 4 questions that allows them to rate their interaction with the dispatcher, and then also 2 with the responding officers. The second component of the program is for us to improve our communication in general surrounding calls and surrounding cases. So it's a very flexible program, and we're in the early stages of implementing. However, just to give you an idea of what kind of messaging it can do is, for example, if an officer is going to be delayed in responding to a call, it can send out a message to the caller automatically and let them know, hey, there's been a delay in responding, much like you get if you order a package online or that sort of thing. So kind of extending that technology. Another example is that when officers respond to calls, like say, for example, there's an identity theft case and they take a report, oftentimes there's a lot of stress with somebody interacting with the officer and they don't hear everything that we tell them in terms of resources, that sort of thing, is we could have it follow up with, hey, here's some resources about contacting the credit bureaus, that sort of thing. So a lot of different use cases for it on the information side. But the survey side is really key, because one of the challenges that we have is, you know, we assess our performance in a number of different ways. Some is driven by metrics, some is sort of just what we hear, but there's a lot of information that we don't get back. You all may hear it because somebody has a call for service and then they tell their friends how it went or whether we did well or it didn't go well. This gets the information right back in our hands and lets us know how things are working out. One of the things that we found through the early feedback, and I'm going to go back to the slide that actually shows some of it, is that citizens, in terms of measuring their effectiveness of the response, really comes back to treating people professionally, treating them with respect, making them feel validated. So when they call in about a concern, you know, they tend to rate us higher when they feel that we actually care about their concerns. And if you tie this all the way back to our hiring practices, we made a concerted effort when I came here and working with the staff to really make sure that we had people that cared about the community and that were coming in for the right reasons, and that really wanted to make a difference. And the very early stages of the survey feedback from this is seeing that that does have a linkage to satisfaction. And so now we have a concrete way to sort of measure how we're doing it. It's also a great opportunity to address sort of misinformation. So some of the negative ones that we came back said the dispatcher did a great job, but the officer never responded out. Well, in fact, we look and see the officer did respond, but typically, like, it's a nighttime call, it may be a delayed response, they didn't see him and so forth. And so we actually reached out. Automatically the surveys will get tagged for follow-up and let them know, hey, here's a reason why, or, you know, the officer in fact did respond and here's exactly what they did, and they were very pleased to hear that information. So when you look on the whole, I think it's important to address those things because negative perceptions have a lot of tertiary impacts. And we all know there's been negative perceptions, you know, surrounding crime in the community and relative safety. And then of course how we respond to stuff. So this is key to try to correct that. The second part is we get feedback and we find out, hey, we could have done a better job. Maybe we need to improve a policy or provide direction. And so it also gives us that avenue. Up on the screen, you can see just some examples, but you know, I'll read. Like they said, she was easy to talk to and eased my nerves while trying to get to the station. Very helpful, got a quick response. She was great, very polite and kind. He responded promptly, listened to my concerns. So really good information, and we'll share this back with the officers. We can break it down on an individual basis. We can break it down by shifts. There's a lot of ways that we can slice the data in order to get an assessment of how we're doing. So probably more to follow. I would say next year's report will have a whole year of data and kind of see, you know, how we're doing and how we're being perceived to do. Because sometimes we think we do a good job and then we find out the perception was the opposite. So always good to get that feedback. Okay, so the numbers, everybody's always interested each year in, you know, what are the numbers within the statistics? So looking at the numbers, we had a 3% increase in calls for service. So sort of within range. This is always going to kind of vary up and down. Obviously more people out and about, you know, in the, as the pandemic has kind of evolved from the lockdown situation. Arrests continue to trend a decline, so 148 less arrests, a 6% decline within there. Officer-initiated activity down 25%. This one really, so to get a perspective, there's 12,000 officer-initiated activities, so it's not like things aren't being done. But we were definitely impacted last year through loss of staff. So we had a long-term person that's on long-term medical leave. We also had retirements, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But a variety of factors have impacted within this area. Reports had a nominal increase of 1%, 31 more reports, so still hovering around 3,700 reports that are taken into the police department and processed. So traffic stops, we did about 3,600 traffic stops. A concerning area is a significant increase in injury collisions. So I broke down the numbers. Fatals, there was 3 less than the prior year, but there were 6 more major and 21 more collisions that had minor injuries. I think this is something not only as a police department, but also too with public works and engineering that we need to start thinking about as the city grows and there's more traffic on the roadways and we engineer things, is to really think about traffic safety and opportunities to mitigate. You know, when we look at it, the 3 E's, you look at engineering, right? You look at enforcement and education. So those are 3 areas where we can try to impact these numbers. Our overall numbers are still numerically not super high. So, you know, I think it's something we should just be aware of as we move forward. We did lose the traffic officer position because of staffing issues last year and then a promotion. It is something that as we gain back staffing that we hope to put back on there because enforcement is an important factor. Response times, so priority 1 response times slightly went down to 6 minutes 25 seconds from 6 minutes and 35 seconds. However, priority 2 response time and priority 2 and priority 3, slides will work. Priority 2 and 3 both went up. So priority 2 went from 1050 to 1206, and priority 3 from 1347 to 1401. These aren't huge increases, but it's something, again, that we need to be concerned about. Oftentimes what happens here is that there's stacked calls and there's not enough officers to respond. So a call has to sit in what we call pending status, which means we got the request for service, but there's a delay in responding out. And that's often driven by just literally the available number of officers to respond. Priority 1, most places tend to look somewhere within like a 5-minute is a really good response time. Ours, we have a large city to cover, so 10 square miles, so this does factor in that, you know, driving time is always going to be a factor as well. So when you look at 625, that's considered from the time that we took the call to the time that we actually got to the front door of a house or whatever the location is of the incident. Okay, part 1, so violent crime had an 18% drop year over year. That's a trend that we've seen happening in the last several years. However, property crime had a slight increase of 5% year over year. Part 1 crime remains at an all-time low. Looking back to 5 years ago, it's a 35% reduction, combining violent crime and property crime. Violent crime is at now a 7-year low. Last year was a 6-year low, so the trend keeps going. Property crime, even though we saw a slight increase, still remains the lowest since the founding of the city, or the records being available, I should say. Breaking this down, so this is looking at the details of property crime. Burglary was down 4%. Arson had a pretty significant decrease, but stolen vehicles and larceny are up by concerning factors. Looking at stolen vehicles over the last few years, our trend had been going down, and I would say that we had a disproportionately high amount of vehicle thefts. But then last year, you see the increase back up. Same thing with the theft. So larceny would include things that, you know, petty theft type situations, something that doesn't fall within the burglary category. So definitely concerning within there. So looking at factors that can influence this, it's difficult to pin on any one thing of why does crime go up or why does crime go down. But anecdotally, we see impacts of a lot of things. And one of the main ones is a $0 bail has had a significant negative impact in our experience in certain cases. So one of the things when they implemented the $0 bail during the pandemic, originally it was driven by the California Supreme Court basically implemented it statewide. They then repealed it last summer and left it up to each local jurisdiction. I researched all the jurisdictions throughout California and doing a presentation for our local judicial council meeting, and found that many courts had actually reinstated bail for certain stuff. In our case, essentially all property related crimes were left at $0 bail. So you have situations where individuals commit felony level activities in terms of stealing things, that sort of stuff, and we give them a ticket and send them back on their way. I think that in some cases, maybe it made sense in terms of the $0 bail with certain low-level offenses, but it definitely, we saw a lot of problems. At one point, even like drunk in public, we weren't able to book in the county jail because of the $0 bail. It created some unique situations. But we've, provided feedback to the decision makers, and we've seen progress. Most recently, what we've seen is we'll arrest somebody or file charges on it. They end up going to court, and then they'll release them on what's called OR, which is sort of like zero bail. So it's a order of release, and it has conditions that they put, like, for example, maybe don't drink alcohol, whatever various stuff related to their offense. Well, we'll see people, they'll be released and then be right back in town, getting drunk, getting involved in situations, engaging in criminal activity, stealing cars again, that sort of thing. And our avenue to charge a violation for that was a zero bail crime. Basically violating the judge's order was $0. We did bring this attention to the Superior Court, and they just recently changed it to add it so it's now a bookable offense. So we'll kind of see how that sort of thing plays its way out. A second factor are DA resources. So the district attorney's office, if you're not aware, has had significant issues regarding maintaining staffing and hiring district attorneys and having folks available to be able to prosecute cases. At one point during this year, there were several months where they just started declining to file cases that fall within quality of life stuff, like misdemeanor drug possession charges, that sort of thing. And the problem is these are often the crimes that you actually see out and about, right? Like somebody being under the influence, somebody carrying around drugs, that sort of thing. They just flat stop filing them for a period of time. Fortunately, they have brought that back. So we are seeing cases being filed again, which is important because you have to consider that a police officer exercises discretion. So the cases that are going, it's not like 100% of the time that an officer's taking action on an offense. They exercise discretion, look at the situation, determine if it warrants action. So the issue being is if 100% of these things are being declined when it rises to the level that we're going to take action on it, that creates a problem. So seeing some movement within that, they have gotten some more resources and they are filing the cases. I will say though, within that area, we've also done our part. So on a number of offenses, like for example, traffic related things that are classed as a misdemeanor, like your license is expired. Technically it's a misdemeanor, but people don't go to jail for that sort of thing. We have worked with the district attorney's office and are direct filing some of those as infractions. So we end up, it kind of streamlines the process and alleviates putting pressure onto the court system that would otherwise be required for a misdemeanor offense. Traffic offense, it gets filed, you get a summons, you go to court, present your case, and then a commissioner makes a decision. Another factor driving, when we look at criminal prosecutions, I think last year we got somewhere around 400 or so arrest warrants, which is a huge amount of warrants to take in and to try to go out and serve. The court has been backlogged because of COVID. They haven't been able to have as many jury trials and so forth, and so a lot of cases have been stacking up, and that contributes to individuals that are racking up, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus felony cases, but then come back out on the street, reoffend, and that takes an officer off the street to arrest them, put them back in, go re-serve a warrant, they go to jail, they release them, another warrant gets issued. It's this big vicious cycle. And it's also one of the reasons that I think drives why Lake County has one of the highest arrest rates in the state of California, because we see a lot of repeat offenders just cycling through the system. So what have we been doing about this stuff? I mentioned, reaching out to the decision makers and trying to look at sort of what things can change to drive both things that we can do and outside. We did implement last year live scan booking, so we have a machine now in our holding facility where when we arrest people on certain misdemeanor offenses that aren't bookable, we can still bring them down here and take care of the booking process locally. and then release them out. That has the effect of, in certain cases, removing them from the scene of where a criminal situation's happening. Like, for example, still to this day, if an offender came here and stole your car, we watched it happen, and then we get them into custody, we couldn't book them into the jail. So they would just get a ticket and then be left there to do whatever. So at least here, we can bring them back to the station, we get their fingerprints, we get a positive ID on who we are, and it'll help ultimately later on with the prosecution effort. We did bring back, towards the end of the year under review, the special enforcement. You may recall those had a lot of positive feedback from the community in terms of addressing quality of life issues. So we brought those back, and we'll continue to do more throughout this year with the cadence. Our goal of cadence is one every other month. These are a challenge with staffing because we have to pull people in on overtime to do it, so it can be a challenge. We did roll out the bike patrol program. So we acquired bikes during the summer. We had a few issues getting them rolling, so to speak, but they are in full operation. And they've been a great resource. They're electric bikes, so we're able to take them out and ride throughout the city and get a lot of area covered. They're also very quiet, so you can sneak up on criminal type activity and being able to address it, and the officer can get a lot farther than just a traditional bike. And they're fully outfitted with lights and all that good stuff. Our ALPR network, so you may recall the city invested in the automated license plate reader cameras, and then we did an expansion last year. In 2021, we saw 73 cases solved, primarily recoveries of stolen vehicles. So although the stolen vehicle rate's going up, that factor doesn't take into all that's capturing are vehicles that are reported stolen to us. However, a lot of cases where we recover stolen vehicles are vehicles that are stolen in another jurisdiction and brought into our jurisdiction, and we've gotten very good through this network of intercepting those vehicles as soon as they hit into the city. We've had cases like one that I can think of that came from Los Angeles, and within a few minutes of entering into the city, we were able to intercept that vehicle and recover it. So definitely an impact. I've had the opportunity to talk to vehicle owners within our community that have had vehicles recovered by this, and they're incredibly grateful for the technology and the fact that we're able to reduce that time from, if a vehicle is stolen to when we can recover it, which is huge. And it's something that, as a community that, economically is very challenged, a vehicle means a lot to people, right? That's maybe their only means to get to and from work. It may result in a loss of work. I think our public transportation system, can be challenging for folks, and being able to try to tackle this issue, I think, is really important within the community. The other part to think about is that, in some places where they're economically more advantaged, they have things like security cameras around the house, their street lights, that sort of thing. They can help reduce this type of activity from happening. Folks here may not have access to that stuff. So I think as a city, we're definitely doing our part to try to tackle this issue, and we'll continue to look for other avenues. There's also other cases that this has been used for. With one is a shooting case that happened. There's actually been several shootings where this has come into play with helping provide information. It's also an important tool to exonerate individuals. So information comes out, they think, this person might be involved. We can show, hey, the car wasn't actually there. So it's important to get the guilty as it is to exonerate those that have no involvement in a situation. This is a picture of the police mountain bike, the e-bike, so fully outfitted with all the lights, going through the parks. Code enforcement, they did 528 property cases last year, or the year under review, 834 vegetation. They abated 387 vehicles. They took care of 131 cannabis cases, which we see a reduction in there. You'll see these numbers of property cases, vegetation, and cannabis are all showing down. You're going to continue to see fluctuations as we kind of retarget what things code enforcement is focusing on. Last year, for example, there was a huge focus on vehicle abatements throughout the city, which is reflected, skip to these numbers here, 1,000 abandoned vehicle tags. That was an increase of 496. There's a lot of work that goes into doing that and the process that we have to do to make that happen. So there's going to be some ebb and flow. The other thing is that, Within citations, you'll see we wrote over 2,000 administrative citations and 866 parking sites. That one was a huge increase. And often the parking sites on code enforcement relate to abandoned vehicles, so definitely a strong focus there to try to clean things up. That said, it's a daunting issue, it's an expensive issue, and it's a frustrating issue for people in the community, not only with driving by and seeing this stuff that gets continually dumped throughout the community, but also too people that own property and otherwise good property owners, but they get a vehicle dumped on their property, and it's not cheap to get these things off. We try to do as much as possible to help. You'll remember last year we lowered the fee to sort of take off the overhead. The city basically took on that cost, but it's still a challenge. We don't have anywhere near enough money to remove all these vehicles that are out there. The best we can do is try to keep the flow, keep the pressure on the flow, and I think we're doing an okay job at that. But it's expensive, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in removing vehicles only to have more brought back in. The vacant building registration program, there was 5 that were added, but we still have, I think, somewhere around like 18 that are currently being monitored. I would say in that program, we see mixed results, but I think overall the intent of the ordinance is being fulfilled. We're seeing properties that have been derelict and not taken care of being addressed, but it's slow. These places didn't become derelict properties overnight, and it's going to take a long time to get them fixed up. But if you go down Lakeshore, I mean, you'll see places getting painted and cleaned up, and you can see evidence of this program by the signs that are on the sides that say, this property is under management by whatever company and a 24-hour number. So animal control, another area that's really a big challenge. Last summer, we contracted with North Bay Animal Services to help us with the animal control officers, because we had 2 that left. They started fulfilling that role, and then almost immediately, because of COVID leaves, started helping out with kennel staff, and we ended up extending that contract. So they've been a huge help with us, but it's still been a challenge. We had seen the year before a decline with animals coming in, but then all of a sudden it picked up the other direction, and so we're constantly fighting with trying to keep the shelter, below kind of a cap. But sometimes we'll be right in line, and then a litter of puppies comes in or something like that, so it can be a challenge. And then of course just the routine calls. So big numbers: 391 animals in, 179 off to rescue, 20 adoptions. The adoptions were down year over year. I'm not sure with people going back to work, maybe they don't have time to take care of the adopted animals. And then licensing, 324, but there's sort of a caveat there. We switched to pet data for handling our licensing, which is what the county uses in Lakeport and many other jurisdictions. It's a contracted service. They picked up 204 of those licenses for the last 2 months of the year, I believe, since they signed the contract. So I think we're gonna see a lot better return on there, and that money goes directly back into our animal program and tries to ensure responsible ownership with rabies vaccinations and rabies control. So officer recruitment continues to be a challenge. We had 50 applicants, did 9 backgrounds. We were able to hire 3 officers. One of the officers, I believe, that's in there on the 3 was actually a transition from CSO, but nonetheless, we had better results. I think the year before we had 1 that landed on the list, so definitely an improvement there. We're doing, I think, everything we can reasonably think of to try to increase outreach. Lieutenant Hobbs leads up this effort, but is supported by officers and sergeants and so forth that go and do presentations, conduct the testing, and all these other things. It's a significant amount of work. And I would tell you it's an industry issue. It's in California, it's across the nation. It's a challenge. Dispatcher recruitment, we had 92 applicants, 1 background, and 1 hired. The 1 hired there has a star because they were actually from the year before, but they were technically hired within this year, because otherwise it would have been 0. It's very challenging. However, we do have 1 that's in the promising category right now to come in, but we also have a planned retirement in dispatch this summer, so you gain 1, you lose 1. It's definitely a challenge, but the staff in there are doing an incredible job with covering, and we've had COVID leaves impact within there for exposures and so forth, and picking up overtime and making sure that, to the public, they don't know it's 24/7, 365 that dispatch center operates. And we even have some officers that will fill in as well to try to bridge the gap. Retirement, so this is sort of the flip side of, you have agencies that have really high turnover. We've done, I think, a pretty good job with reducing the folks that are leaving the organization. The flip side, though, is when people stay, then the next reason why they leave is because they retire, right? And you can't blame them for that. So we had 2 service retirements during the year. We lost a detective and we lost a sergeant, both with considerable amounts of experience, so that has a negative impact. But it does create opportunities. We're able to promote a sergeant and we're able to put another officer into detectives. So it does create opportunity, and that's one of the reasons why people look to stay in an organization is by having challenges. So, there's some silver lining to it. We also lost 2 of our annuitants. So we had a retired annuitant that was helping with dispatch. We also had one that was helping with investigations, and we've been unable to fill either of those positions since they left. So that's had a significant negative impact. So training continues to be a focus for us with our staff. We've been looking at different opportunities to increase the overall competencies that the officers have, the leadership, the supervisors, all that sort of thing. Sergeant Cook graduated from the Post-SLI Leadership Institute, which is a extensive program that they attend throughout a period of a number of months. They go off for usually 3 days at a time and work with a cohort of students that are from throughout the state. We currently have another sergeant that's in this program, and we'll continue to do this as we get the sergeants through. I think it's an incredible program from a leadership perspective, and something that we want to continue to invest in. We also tried something new this year, which was a Cpoa leadership development program. And essentially, this program is for line level personnel as well as personnel who are looking to promote. So before we did the sergeant testing, we offered this out for a number of staff. It was a 60-hour program that they sort of did at their own pace. It's an online-based learning and focuses on character-based decision-making, personal and professional development, and virtues-based leadership. So again, really trying to instill on that leadership component within the department. I mentioned before about traffic. So a lot of the classes that were kind of on hold because of COVID have started to come back, and one of them that we focused on sending staff to was radar class. So we had 3 employees added that were trained up on radar. They have new radar devices to be able to go out and enforce speed, so make sure you follow the speed limit because they're out there. But really, we get complaints from different people throughout the community about traffic-related stuff, and speeding is the #1 issue that they come up with. So it's great for us to have this resource where they can go out and do it, because without the training, they can't use the radar. They can only pace vehicles, so it makes it difficult. We also have deployed out, or we acquired and started deploying out a radar trailer. I think it's actually right across from here tonight. We had a radar trailer before, and then you may recall it kind of aged out and went into retirement, and so now we have a new one. It's a little bit smaller, but it's mighty and captures a lot of data. So we can use that to feed into here. We can also address concerns like, for example, Public Works had a complaint about some of the new roadways project that people are driving really fast because it's paved. We're actually able to analyze, and certainly there were some cases where people were driving fast, but on the overall, we're able to show that that's not the case all the time. And the benchmark is called the 85th percentile. That's how they set speed limits, was actually right in line with the speed limit. So it can help direct us, like to figure out, well, when are these speeding issues happening and what's the true extent of it. So definitely important. So we also were able to recognize years of service last year. So I have mentioned, recruitment is one component, but also to retention. Every year that an officer or an employee stays on, they become that much more of an expert on issues that are happening and more effective. So having them around is super important from an investment perspective. We're able to recognize for 20 years of service our support services technician who manages all of our evidence. We're able to recognize our code enforcement supervisor, Lambert, with 15 years of experience, Sergeant Cook with 10 years of experience with the agency, and then for 5 years, our senior code enforcement officer, Felder, Officer Kelleher, and Dispatcher Mendez. So definitely important to be able to recognize their their commitments to the city. So our focus moving forward, the slide hasn't changed since I delivered the first one of these reports, and I think it's important because, you know, some change is rapid, other change takes a long time. When you look at culture and perceptions and that sort of thing, it takes time to build that. It's not something you do overnight. So our focus remains on personnel with both recruitment and retention, engaging with the community, being accountable to the community, so measuring what we're doing. I mentioned like the Q-Head investment as we go forward, and then striving for excellence. We're not perfect, we make mistakes, but I can tell you that the staff within the police department, the officers, the civilian staff, et cetera, they all work really hard, they care about the community, and they really try to do the right thing. Sometimes we fall short, but we own up to that and we use those opportunities to improve. And I would tell you that I'm incredibly proud of the work that they do. Everything that you see up here that's captured, plus all the other things I'm not able to cover, it's because of them. I mean, they're the ones out there day in, day out, middle of the night, making sure that our community is cleaner and safer. I would tell you that sort of now I have a bit of a look back, having been here for several years, and you know, the council adopted in the strategic plan, you know, one of the overarching goals was to create a cleaner and safer city. I can tell you that I'm confident that as a city and as a department supporting that effort, that is happening. We are a statistically safer city, and we are becoming a cleaner city. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Going back to the traffic collisions, non-injury, are you seeing any patterns within the city, any particular areas, subdivisions where maybe those accidents are occurring?
I don't have a direct answer to yours on it as far as analyzing. It's something that we're looking at to see, and particularly like looking at the relationship between collision data, the primary collision factor, and speeding. I mentioned about the radar trailer. That's why one of the reasons we brought it back, so that we can get data. The most common collision factor usually is unsafe speed, as I'm sure you're aware. It's sort of a catch-all for collisions. From the fatal perspective, tends to be up on the highway with people crossing, and it's not like it's necessarily areas where it's not lit or anything else. It seems that those things happen.
The reason I ask is we are doing some road improvements. We've had some complaints actually expressed in this chamber, you know, concerned citizens because of the road improvements. I was just wondering if there's anything to bear down.
Yeah, and I would encourage, you know, obviously you guys get some information direct. We have that resource now. It's being deployed on a regular basis. Please forward to me if you have a concern from somewhere. Let's get the data and look at it, and we can compare it to it. We did just recently do a reassignment, so Sergeant Peralt, who was the traffic officer, he's now overseeing traffic. We just recently did that thing, but one of his charges is to look at that sort of stuff. So feel free to send those concerns, and we'll be happy to respond back and let him know what we find.
How many do you have on traffic now that,
We don't have any currently because of staffing.
so Officer Peralta is,
He's
Can I
a-
just remind the council to speak into their microphone so
sorry.
everyone can hear? Thank you.
yeah, question was,
Right, so he promoted last summer, and we haven't been able to fill the position since then because of vacant positions.
so he's basically back actually doing the,
He's supervising a shift, so our sort of traffic enforcement is really, the load's being carried by all the officers between calls for service. And then I mentioned like the 3 additional radar trained officers, they're out doing stuff. And then we did do a special operation that was just focused on traffic, but we do not currently have a dedicated traffic officer like when Officer Peralt was handling that as his full-time job.
but it seemed like your traffic stops were up, if I remember the,
Overall, they're actually, they're slightly down, but the patrol officers are picking up that
in
load.
this lack of,
Yep.
okay.
Well, actually, I have a question. So on the new speed trailer there, exactly what type of information do you get out of that speed trailer? Like, do you tell if somebody starts slower and goes faster or slows down? Or I'm just curious because there's some places where, say up by my place, where they come around and they seem like they're going really super fast. But are they really, because I get complaints, and even I say, well, I think they're probably going the speed limit, but it's kind of dangerous there because there's no place for people to walk. So I'm just curious what kind of information that system actually gets.
Right, so it can give you time-based data on maximum speed, minimum speeds, the 85th percentile number. The direction I believe it can give you, whether it's approaching or receding, it's operating based upon radar, so it's not necessarily going to tell you like the vehicles were coming in slowing down or going faster. But it does give you, in my experience, it gives you a pretty good indication of what's going on. And then of course they can look at that and adapt it, because sometimes, you know, the most optimum place to put it may not be where exactly you're seeing it, right? They slow down by the time they get to that spot. But it's got a lot of data, and then the time piece is really important day of week, because then we can figure out, okay, you know, the person might anecdotally think the issue's happening here, but, you know, if we want to deploy resources, let's say we have 4 hours overtime to put somebody out, we can look at the data and go, okay, going here is going to be the most effective to try to slow stuff down. The other part is you can operate it in a stealth mode where it doesn't give you feedback, but it just collects data. And so we can actually see, like, you know, can we slow things down based upon before and after? So there's a lot of flexibility. Right now, we're just sort of in the early stages of getting used to it. It's definitely way more advanced than the prior one that we had.
That's great.
Councilman Clark, is there any questions?
No, I'm very impressed, Chief. Excellent job to you and your entire staff. Well done.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Purdon, there's a
Follow-ups. So you and I have talked about SB 109, being able to book in the jail. Is there any, I know the sheriff is very obviously trying to work on this as well, and through that collaboration, do you see any changes, or maybe with the district attorney's office help?
Yeah, I mean, I think the district attorney's office was receptive to the concerns that I brought forward to them about the sort of the blanket non-filings instead of looking at a case-by-case basis. Obviously, they changed in that area. The sheriff's been supported to the extent that they can. Obviously, they have crowding issues. I think most recently I heard that the state stopped accepting their prisoner transfers. So then that backlogs everything over there. In terms of legislation changes, I mean, I think we'll just have to see what happens. Obviously, with the theft issues addressing the metropolitan areas, I wouldn't be surprised if you see more legislation in that area. We're not exactly seeing that. I think our issues are different, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Do you think that has a trend in property crimes because of the changes in the laws?
I think a few things. I think our property crimes probably, I wouldn't say artificially because they went down, but were impacted by the fact that, you know, the year before with the pandemic in place, so many people are sheltered at home, they weren't going to work, so the chance of, like, say, somebody doing break-ins, that sort of things, was reduced. I think from our experience, one of the concerns that I hear from officers is dealing with repeat offenders who are just going out, breaking into things. You know, one person was, I think, over at Highlands Park and was going for a walk, and this individual just, who's known to law enforcement, you know, goes and gets inside the car, and the guy comes to approach him, and he didn't have a care in the world about taking this guy's car and continued working on taking it even when the officer pulled up to it. So I think that, you know, I think there's a deterrent effect from being booked in jail for certain offenses,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, is it the district attorney's office that's driving that, or the courts that are limiting those that are being actually jailed?
So the court adopts the presumptive bail schedule, and basically what that means is they determine which ones have a zero bail. If they have a zero bail, the policy of the sheriff's office is not to accept them in for booking. And so that's sort of what the determiner. So it is a local issue. Previously, it was the state had just decreed that that's what it was going to be. But currently, right now, it is a local control issue. The judges can decide to change anything they want on the bail schedule.
I have several questions and comments. Where do you find these new programs and new technology to deal with the issues that you face? Just by being involved, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a variety of sources, you know, staff comes up with, you know, different things that they hear or read about. I think we have a pretty innovative department where, you know, folks come up with sort of an idea and then we make it happen. You know, from my own view, you know, I participate in the state, I'm on the state 911 advisory board, so I'm connected with that in terms of kind of what trends are happening. And then also too through the Police Chiefs Association, to be able to see kind of what other agencies are doing. But I am proud of the fact that the staff here, you know, they really care about things, so they think about stuff, and even collaboration. Like, you know, we had the Gobi Desert project, which was really the year before, but then carrying into this year, you know, we've hit challenges like, for example, people keep, you know, running down gates that we put in place, but then we talk to Public Works and they come up with solutions. And so the city's pretty creative in terms of dealing with things.
The other part is the street safety issue. I mean, if I just think about Lakeshore Drive, I mean, there's a significant increase in traffic.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if is there traffic data available that shows that there's so much increase in car traffic, and there, I assume there is. The next question is, are there stolen vehicles that are abandoned up here? Are they from the city, or are they mostly from out of town?
So the numbers that I presented of the UCR data related to stolen vehicles, those are vehicles that are stolen from our jurisdiction. They may be recovered somewhere else, it just depends. The ones that maybe are brought into this city, those aren't reflected in our stolen vehicle numbers because they're reflected in the agency that took the original report.
It seems like there's I mean, I don't know where these RVs come from, but I can't imagine that there's so many within the city.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising how these vehicles continue to flow in, because you'd think with so many being towed and crushed, that is one difference. When code enforcement abates it, the process is longer, but the end result is the vehicle is crushed. So theoretically, it's not back out on the street. But to your point, yeah, it's like a never-ending stream of RVs and other vehicles. And just a cost perspective, an RV can easily cost $4,000 to remove. So it's frustrating. And from the public's perspective, absent seeing the sticker that we put on to abate it, it just looks like, it's there. So the assumption is we're not doing anything about it.
Two other things. The electric bike, I think that's a pretty cool idea. And I think you know why I think that.
Yes.
But at the same time, if I think back of growing up in a small town in Europe, I mean, the police officers rode their bikes.
Right.
around. I think it connects with the community a lot better.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the feedbacks from the officers that have ridden them have talked about that, because it's easier to go up and contact people. And
how much understaffed are you really right now? What's
so it's kind of a moving target. I mean, we have this swearing now. We have another position that we're filling, but then we are going to lose in the next 2 months. We'll lose a retirement likely, and then we have a long-term medical that we're not seeing that, and then we have currently right now an officer that's in. Starting the training program. So it's hard to, if I tell you a number like we're down a position, but the reality is, well, what's the actual down, it goes below there. We still haven't filled the SRO position, so that's above and beyond because we haven't even gotten close to dealing with that. Dispatch, we have one person that's on long-term leave, and then we have an opening within there. And then we have a planned retirement in there this summer, so you can see the numbers will switch very quickly.
I want to commend you on a couple of things. One is the investment in your staff. I think that is a tremendous feather in your cap, because that's how people stay here, and it shows in this statistic. But also your presentation at Judicial Council certainly shows that you are invested in this community and you want to make things happen, and I commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple follow-ups, I appreciate it. Chief, early on, you mentioned the microwave system, you were looking for funding to extend it, I forget exactly what.
Yeah, we obtained the funding, and then we were able to finally get it installed.
But there was something else, you said you were looking for some additional funding
Oh, I think the other one was the fire dispatch. We have the
Yeah,
funding.
you do have
Yeah,
the
we have the funding now.
I was gonna ask you how much that was
Yep.
if you didn't have it.
Yep.
And then the last one, the stolen vehicles that come in from outside the area, do we have to pay for the removal of those, or does the jurisdiction they're stolen from?
So, difficult question, sometimes.
I wouldn't
So-
ask it if it weren't difficult.
Yeah, it depends is the answer. In many cases, if it's, the car's insured or the owner cares about it, we would tow it. They ultimately have to work it out with the tow company as far as paying of fees. If they end up getting abandoned and nobody ever comes to collect it, then it ends up with, becoming a code enforcement has to abate it and get it out of here.
It's too bad we can't go, it's too bad we can't go back to the jurisdiction on things like that.
Yeah, and I think the abandoned vehicle situation really is not driven by the stolen vehicles, even though we get a lot coming in. I think the players might be common between it of parting out cars and that sort of thing, but my experience, I'm still shocked by the number of vehicles that show up here that, you know, in my prior experience, I'd say, well, that vehicle's likely stolen, and then you run it and it's clear, but somehow they just end up in Clearlake and part it out.
Yeah, I noticed the one up by the cash fire that's showed up after the cash fire.
Vice Mayor.
Just in wrapping up, Chief, I just want to thank you. Recently, code enforcement worked in collaboration with your enforcement side. We had an RV that was parked off in the brush and causing some concerns for neighbors and around the hospital, and they just did a fantastic job, provided all the postings, were really timely in getting up there and abating the problem, and very professional all the way through, and it just really made people feel safer in the neighborhood. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much appreciated, Chief White. You're the man that gets things done. We thank you. All right, we'll go to item number F, public comment. Public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to address the city council or any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought before under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concern may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda items. Comments can be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody in the public want to make a comment? Do we have anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised within the Zoom for public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to the consent agenda. Anybody wants to pull an item for that? We know that item number 9 has been deleted. Anybody want, any from the council, anybody from the public wants to pull an item? If not, we'll bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the amended consent agenda as presented.
We have a
Second.
motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. We go to our
Aye.
who is missing.
Kramer?
Mine says that it was accepted.
Did you refresh it first?
Your vote is yay, and it's been, I'll do it again. How about now? Okay.
Motion passes with unanimous yes vote of the council.
Okay, we'll go to item number 10, presentation and consideration of letters of support to Lakes APC pursuit of a rural REN program in Lake County. Mr. Flores posted it, but he's not here. Is anybody going to make that presentation? Chief White, do you know?
So I believe they're on Zoom.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening, council members. My name is Lisa Davy Bates, and I am the executive director for the Lake Area Planning Council. And tonight I also have with me Stephen Coleman, who is the director of demand side management with the Redwood Coast Regional Authority. And Stephen and I are here tonight to talk to you briefly about the Rural Regional Energy Network, or REN. And per your agenda item, we are seeking approval of a letter of support for the creation of this program. And so as for the requirements in terms of involvement or the participation of the City of Clearlake, it will only be through the Lake Area Planning Council as a member of our Joint Powers Agreement. There will be no additional cost or workload involved because the money for this program is coming from fees that are already paid through their utility bills through a public goods charge that was instituted by the CPUC in 1996. And that will be managed by the Lake Area Planning Council and RCEA. So the Lake Area Planning Council Committee, Executive Committee that is, voted unanimously to move forward with this project, and the full APC board is going to vote on the Memorandum of Understanding on February 9th. And all documents must be submitted to RCEA by February 10th in order for them to meet the CPUC's application deadline. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Stephen and Stephen Coleman, who will be providing you a brief presentation.
Thank you. Here today, let me see if I can bring up this presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we got it, Stephen.
Great. And afterwards, I will say that here on Zoom, it's been really hard to hear some of the council members. And so if I don't hear you and don't respond to a question, I'm not ignoring you. So, yeah, as Lisa said, I'm here to talk about a rural regional energy network. And I'll just go through some of the background on this. And so back in November, members of the Lake APC and Mendocino Council of Governments reached out to us at RCEA to explore the formation of a regional energy network, or what's also called a REN. And it turned out to be very good timing for your two counties because RCEA had been in the process for a good year doing all the legwork of putting one of these together. And I'll explain exactly what a REN is. And so, but we had been collaborating with other counties, rural counties throughout the state to do this innovative idea of creating a network of rural regions throughout California to help deliver energy services to their customers. And these are things like energy efficiency rebates and assessments for people's homes and things like that. And so some of the advantages of a REN we'll be able to launch new programs to bring energy efficiency incentives and technical support to previously underserved communities. We'd be allowed to design innovative programs directly focused on the communities that they're serving. And as probably most of you are aware, rural regions of California have a very high energy cost to income ratio, but have not received the same amount of service as urban areas. And so the basics are, this is a map of the region that will be served by this rural energy network. And you can see Lake and Mendocino would be included in the North Coast region. And it's through a collaboration of these different agencies in these different areas, serving 31 counties, a number of people. And so it's a very ambitious undertaking that we're looking at doing. And this is just a crazy wordy slide that I don't expect anybody to try and read all of, but just wanted to point out the mission of the Rural REN is really about leveraging rural collaboration, local relationships, and pragmatic responses. And so a lot of times these type of services are run from outside the regions that they're serving, by third parties and contractors who never come up or are bringing money out of the county. And so the goal of this is to keep things as local, run by locals and serving locals. And so this is going to be what we're submitting to the California Public Utilities Commission is a 5-year budget plan covering 6 partners and 7 programs, and it's going to be approximately $96 million over the 5 years. One of the reasons that I'm here presenting on this today is that Redwood Coast Energy Authority is going to act as the program administrator. So we'll be the ones handling all the reporting to the CPUC and the paperwork, and the financing will be passing through us. And Lake County and Mendocino County will have the opportunity to participate in all 7 programs initially as a subcontractor to RCEA. And so the programs that we're applying for are fall into 2 categories, what we're calling non-resource or equity and market support programs. And these are things that raise awareness, do trainings and services. And so there's going to be one for public agencies, your schools, your firehouses, your police stations, helping them with really whatever their energy needs are, applying for funding for things, doing assessments, benchmarking, all that. A residential program targeting low to moderate income households, raising energy awareness and providing audits. Workforce education and training, which is very important. Hopefully we're seeing this green economy coming through with new types of green jobs. We want to see those jobs go to local rural people and get the training, both for new to the workforce people and for existing contractors. A codes and standards programs to help support agencies and jurisdictions such as your own with enforcing building codes and in some cases enacting new codes, and also a finance program to offer zero interest loans of multiple types. A lot of times it's really that first driver of funding that keeps a program from going that eventually will pay for itself. And then on the non-residential or on the resource programs, these are the rebates, you buy a new energy efficiency refrigerator and we cut you a check type of thing. And those will be offered for commercial and residential customers. And so some of the benefits, and as you can see, I'm doing this presentation for both Lake County and Mendocino County. That's why you'll see both in here. So like I mentioned before, a lot of the leverage work has already been done to design and implement this. And like I said, it's been a lot of work and a lot of consultants trying to put this together. You won't be going it alone. There'll be 6 partners to be able to receive guidance from and build capacity for your regions. There is an initial budget that has monies in it to support the 2 Lake County's staff to build up staff capacity and offer these rebates. It's not like we're not asking for money from you. We're trying to bring money into rural regions to help serve the constituents. And also, I mentioned that the plan initially is for Lake and Mendocino to act as subcontractors to RCEA, but the real goal is, up here in Humboldt, we're not trying to come move into Mendocino and Lake County and try and run programs down here. We have our hands full running them up in Humboldt, and so it's bringing on your county and your staff as full members of the rural run. So really, the only which I think there's probably a draft one in your packet tonight. Some of the next steps is that there's going to be an MOU executed between Lake APC and Mendocino County of Governments. The final business plan filing is on March 4th, and upon approval, the idea is that this will begin operations in January of 2023, so just under a year from now. And so I realize that was probably a lot of information. I'm happy to try and answer any questions, and thank you for your attention.
Question from the council? If not, thank you for your presentation. Is anybody, open the public hearing, anybody from the public wants to comment on this? Do we have anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised within the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Bring it back to the council. Vice Mayor Purdock.
Mr. Mayor, we sat on the executive committee for the Lake APC, and it was the request of the executive committee to bring this before the City of Lakeport and the City of Clearlake councils for the support of that, for the letter of support for this program. I think it would benefit the departments, and I also feel that it would benefit our citizens. And that's why it's here, and that's why I would be asking that you sign the letter of support for this, for the rural REN.
Any other comments from the council? Mr. Claffey? Kramer?
Does this require a motion?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion if everyone is done, that the council approve the letter of support and authorize you as mayor to sign it.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. vote on this. Thank you, by the way, for the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
See you next
Appreciate
Wednesday.
your time and letter of support. And we'll be talking soon. Thank you,
Okay,
Steve.
thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephen, for joining tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night. I'm gonna leave now.
Okay, we're all going to sign off. Thank you. Good night.
Right.
Motion passes with a unanimous vote of the council.
All right, we go to item number 11, confirm assessments in the total amount of $13,747.50 for city-funded abatements in accordance with the Clearlake Municipal Code. Let's see, Mr. Lambert.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The purpose of this hearing is to consider and act upon any and all appeals of proposed special assessments. Upon consideration of the evidence and testimony, council may grant the appeal and adopt a resolution to deny or amend the assessment, or deny the appeal and adopt a resolution upholding the assessment for abatement of real property. Inspections and abatement warrants were issued by a judge of the Lake County Superior Court on each property. Code enforcement staff performed and completed each abatement. Property owners were invoiced for the costs of said abatements. Property owners failed to remit payment for the costs of said abatements. Attached to the staff report is the proposed resolution confirming assessments and statement of expenses. I do have a change on the statement of expenses on the, there's a clerical error on property
Must be
number 5.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
It should be $1,502.06. So the mayor should read the resolution by title only. A roll call vote will follow following the reading of the resolution.
All right, we have any questions for Mr. Lambert?
No, sir.
Nope. Oh, you're going, yeah, showing us some pictures here. Was that a before and after?
Mhm.
Okay.
You clay dump the entire Hale Street, or?
We're working on that, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
Thanks, Mr. Lambert. Any questions? If not, I'll open it to the public. Are there any public comments on this, Madam Clerk? Any from the public here at the council chambers?
There are no hands raised within the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'll bring it back to the council.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-08, read by title only, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake confirming special assessments and approving liens against real properties located at 14236 Hale Street, 14238 Hale Street, 14242 Hale Street, 14244 Hale Street, 14246 Hale Street, and 3520 Buckeye Street for the cost of abatements in accordance with Chapter 10 of the Clearlake Municipal Code.
Okay, we have, go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
We need to add the change in number 5 in the resolution or not.
As amended.
As amended, thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Councilwoman Overton. We'll go to our voting.
Aye.
Motion passes with the unanimous vote of the council.
All right, we go to city managers and council member reports. Since our city manager is not here, well, maybe, does Chief Wyford any, since he's...
Yes, Mayor. So the city manager wanted to update the council that in the last week, there were several grants submitted. Some of these the council is already aware of, but we wanted to highlight that they were submitted. Approximately $5 million of 2017 CDBG disaster recovery was submitted for 2 projects. One is the rehabilitation of Burns Valley Road and Arrowhead Road, which I believe the council is aware of. The second is the rehabilitation of the remainder of Lakeshore Drive from Olympic to Highway 53. This would be done in coordination with the Lakeshore Drive Corridor Improvement Project, which is planned to include curb, gutter, sidewalks, and other amenities in the downtown area. The second is the 2017 Cdbgdr PPS. There was 2 projects, the $500,000 code enforcement and $500,000 for citywide stormwater plan. They were able to submit that information. And then the Economic Development Agency EDA funds were requested for the Burns Valley Sports Complex and Rec Center in the amount of $5.27 million. This is in addition to the $3 million for the project that was being requested from State Parks through Prop 68. A Clean California grant for city signage, litter cleanup, and art installations in partnership with the Rural Arts Initiative was submitted in the amount of $1.5 million. And I just wanted to point out, I know the finance department has done a tremendous amount of work to pull this stuff together. So hats off to.
I know Alan was sweating this to get it done in time. All right. Thank you, Chief White. Councilman Kramer, any?
Pretty slow. I had a risk reduction authority meeting last week that I don't really have anything to report upon at this time. And also I was at a bond oversight committee meeting for the Canoctown Unified School District bonds. And nothing to report on that.
Right. Councilman Claffey, anything exciting?
Mr. Mayor, I attended the Visit Lake County meeting, our county-wide marketing effort. And the city was, and this happens a lot, commended for the prompt payments, thanks to our HDL system, to get them the TID and TOT funds. The big takeaway from there is that we're moving to have an increased capability on the website to direct book with countywide hospitality, hotels, vacation rentals, and it may not seem like much, but that will give us the ability to track and analyze all the marketing that we're doing. A lot of that money is going to outward bound awareness marketing. If we can drive them to that website, we can start to really understand what guests to Lake County are looking for. So I think it's a good development there. And that should be all, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask you a question? So explain that a little bit more in detail. So they're going to one website to book for any place in Lake County?
So when you see a billboard, when you see a magazine ad or a newspaper ad, that people are going to see that and they're going to come to our website. It's really tough for us to track where they have come from, how they gather that advertising. So we lose a whole layer of analytics there. However, by having a direct book module on the website, when we drive them to that website, we can then see what they're interested in. So they would go to, perhaps they wanted to stay at a hotel near Blue Lakes or one of our hotels here in Clearlake or a vacation rental. In the past, they would come, they would look at the pretty pictures on our website, and then they'd go to Expedia or Airbnb. This allows us to be that gateway. We present our local listings. They'll go through our gateway to Airbnb. It's just
Just a different way to.
it's just a different way to get there, but a way that we can track, so that we have a better understanding of what guests, what visitors to Lake County really want.
Well, that's great, great, good stuff.
Councilwoman Overton, any?
I have nothing to report this week.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Well, you got to hear from the Lake APC Executive Committee, and thank you for supporting that letter of support, signing that. Clearlake Council, or Chamber met Tuesday night, and Ms. Viramontes made a very nice presentation for the utilization of city-owned properties and park space for both businesses and the public, which was very nice. And I would encourage everyone to look a little bit more into that, because we got some pretty great venues and great resources that are just getting improved all the time. So that was it, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I don't have anything, because I was out of town. All right, future agenda items. Anybody in the council with any bright ideas?
Got a few bright ideas, shared one of them with you as far as how we might be able to fund that scholarship for
Yes.
the college, but I think we need to probably noodle that out a little more with Mr. Flora.
Yeah, I did collaborate with the college and Mr. Cirillo Cortez and Becky Salato on the flyers that will coming out on our Promise program, so we're making some progress on that, so hopefully that will be distributed fairly quickly, so, and I think I'm going to be in a video with it too or something, but we'll find out. All right, if there's nothing else, adjourned at